Hi everyone. For the last couple of weeks, I've been working on a cost-benefit analysis for the expansion of metropolitan Atlanta's public transportation system. In the 1950s and 60s, the federal government built interstate highway systems. These roads are still the primary method or way of transportation for drivers. On the picture on the left, you can see these interstate highway systems along with the local highway systems in the Atlanta metropolitan region. You'll see that these highway systems start in the surrounding Atlanta suburbs and feed in towards the city. If you look at the chart on the right, you'll see that in the 1970s, Atlanta the city was at its peak population. Today, it's much lower by about 70,000 people. In contrast, the Atlanta region population has significantly increased from its 1970s number to today by approximately 3 million people. So we ask ourselves, why is the region growing but the city smaller? One way we can explain this phenomenon is by looking at bid rent functions and labor supply and labor demand curves. With the creation of these new highway systems, the transportation costs for commuters decreased. Therefore, people moved to the suburbs, and the suburban residential district grew. As a result, the labor supply curve shifted towards the right. As a result, wages fell, and firms were able to pay their workers less. Now, assuming that firms had the same costs as before, but now they don't have to pay their employees as much, we see the labor demand grow with the increase of the central business district. Maybe there's more firms that are sprouting up, or maybe firms are just expanding themselves, but regardless, the central business district is growing and the labor demand is growing along with it. And then we'll see the wages rise again. So our main takeaway is that there are now more workers commuting to Atlanta, and they are using the old transportation systems that were built to support the far fewer commuters who needed to drive to work each day in the city. Looking at some 2015 data, we see that approximately 80% of Atlanta commuters drive in some capacity to work. With so many drivers on insufficient highways, commuters spend a great amount of time commuting. Metropolitan Atlanta commuters spend more time commuting than any other region in the country, with the exception of New York and Los Angeles. In contrast, only 11% of Atlanta commuters take public transport. In an attempt to convince more commuters to switch from driving to taking public transit, the Moore MARTA expansion project began in 2016. And if you look at this map, you'll see the old MARTA route is a cross shape, while the new MARTA route is more circular and connects different parts of the city together, and the metropolitan and the city together, region and the city together. So with a referendum, Atlanta voters implemented a half-cent sales tax in the city of Atlanta. And over the course of 40 years, it will raise approximately $2.7 billion that will be spent on this new transportation. We see that this tax money will not cover all of the costs, but regardless, Atlantans will fund approximately 70% of this expansion. So, with these high costs, we ask ourselves, what is the benefit for fellow Atlantans? To break even, we would like to see that switching commuters who drive to taking the MARTA will have Atlantans save approximately $2.7 billion over 40 years. In the simplified example I have here, I calculate the benefit of the Moore MARTA reducing the number of commuting cars each year by 5%. Using data from the Downtown Atlanta Commuter Survey, I found the average number of miles Atlantans commute one way to work, which is 18 miles, and the number of commuting cars to Atlanta each day, which is approximately 285,000. To find the amount saved in the vehicle operating costs in the first year with a 5% reduction in the number of commuting cars, I found 5% of the commuting cars each day and multiplied that value times 2 times 18 to signify the 18 miles being driven to work and the 18 miles being driven home from work. Then I multiplied this value times 50 times 5 to signify that the drivers are working 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. By using data from the Victoria Transportation Policy Institute, I was able to assume that every mile not driven saves driving commuters or previously driving commuters about 15 cents. So we multiply this value times 0.15. So when we do this, we get we have that the reduction of commuting cars by 5% in year 1 saves Atlantans approximately $19 million. To find the amount saved in the long-term mileage-related costs in the first year with a 5% reduction in the number of commuting cars, I found, again, 5% of the commuting cars each day and multiplied the value times 2 times 18 times 50 times 5. Same thing we did before, 2 times 18 for the trip to and from work on average, and then 50 times 50 times 5 to signify someone who's working 5 days a week, 50 days a year. And then again, with information from the Victoria Transportation Policy Institute, I was able to assume that every mile not driven saves driving commuters about 10 cents, so we multiply this value times 0.1. So when we find this calculation, we find that the long-term mileage-related costs that is saved in the first year is approximately $12 million. Then we sum the amount saved in the vehicle operating costs in the first year and the amount saved in the long-term mileage-related costs to find the dollars saved in year 1 when there's a 5% reduction in the number of commuting cars. So with this sum, we have a value of that we save approximately $32 million in the first year. Now, if I wanted to find how much a 5% reduction in the number of commuting cars amounts to in 40 years, I would continue with these calculations for each year, but account for the compounded 5% annual reduction in the number of commuters on the roads. Then we would sum them all together. So when I did this, I found this amount to be approximately $500 million. And as this value is less than the $2.7 million Atlantans are paying with their sales tax, we would say that the cost of the Moore MARTA expansion outweighs the benefits. Now, this is just a brief benefit calculation with only 2 means of savings. There are a myriad of others. For example, I am sure that there will be commuters who currently own vehicles and drive to work each day that will switch to taking the MARTA and decide to sell or not buy another car. There are other benefits like the reduction of pollution thanks to less drivers on the road that are hard to account for that will also contribute to the benefits. So, well, there are clear benefits and there's a significant cost, but to have the benefits outweigh the costs, we need to make sure there are enough people taking the MARTA or utilizing the Moore MARTA expansion route. So the MARTA or division of the Georgia Department of Transportation is really working on public outreach and trying to hear from the metropolitan Atlanta community about what they would like to see with these expansion projects. They're conducting surveys and talking to people so there's communication and a clear understanding of what Atlantans need and what they want and what's going to make them switch from driving themselves in to taking the public transit. And they're also being very upfront with the benefits to the metropolitan region the expansion project will bring. They're emphasizing how there's going to be an increase in access to hundreds of thousands of jobs and how people of minority communities will have better access to other parts of the city and just the overall ease in transportation. So the public outreach is currently where MARTA is right now, trying to talk to as many people as they can to get their input and just know what their audience needs, what they need to do to make their audience essentially buy their product. So thanks for watching, and I hope to hear some good comments.